Welcome to the Atomic Impact Podcast. I am your host, Jason Osborn, and on this podcast, we interview successful business owners for them to share atomic, impactful lessons that they've learned and share them with us as well. As always, this show is sponsored by the LinkedIn Reverse Podcast Method, the new way to close deals that doesn't rely on any of the old traditional methods that everybody hates. We use this method to book 26 qualified leads and sales calls in 10 days without any ad spend, outreach, or endless social media posting. To generate leads on LinkedIn, you have to stop marketing on LinkedIn, which might surprise you. To find out more, direct message me on LinkedIn to have a chat. It's Jason A. Osborn, and the link will be in the show notes below. Today's guest is David Haylor. He's the owner of Haylor Leadership, providing leadership training and development and associated advisory support for businesses. So great to have you on the show today, David. And I want to start off with a question that I always love asking. And here it is. If you had a and you were able to go back to the very beginning of whenever you started your very first business to give your younger self some advice, what would be the biggest piece of advice that you would give yourself to maybe stop some of the unnecessary heartache or challenges that you experienced in business?
Great question. I think that the most important thing I'd want to tell myself is don't get too tied up with the failures and mistakes, because that's so critical to what we all need to do in order to be successful. Having said that, if there was one lesson I could have learned much earlier, is that I think too often in business, we try and do what works. What do we think will make money? What will get us to where we want to get to? And personally, I think that's a mistake. I think you have to focus on what you've got a real genuine passion for, because that passion will drive you through all the complexity and all the challenges to allow you to succeed. And I think if I'd embraced that earlier in my commercial life, that would have been led to greater and quicker success, I think.
Okay. So not getting tied up too much in the failures, but then also following things that you're passionate about. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. But a real driving passion. I think I work with a lot of founders of startup businesses through to execs and established businesses. And the ones who are genuinely most successful do all of the technical things right. They've learned the right lessons, but most importantly, they have an absolute passion for what they do. They believe in what they do. It's not just this will earn me a certain amount of money. This will get me the next promotion. It's I believe in this. And I think if you can harness that, you will be enormously successful in whatever business you have, because all the other mistakes you can make are just part of the process. You kind of need them. But if you don't have the underlying passion, those mistakes will kind of kill you off. They will drain your motivation because you haven't got the passion to push through that.
Yeah. So having almost like a deep conviction in what you're doing and be
Yes.
passionate about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which makes total sense. What are some of the biggest challenges that you find that people, when they do start their businesses and maybe they are just doing it to, they see an opportunity to make money, maybe they're not quite passionate about what they do. Is there a transition they can start moving in towards? Because, if they already have their business up and running, they're not necessarily going to shut it down. But what's some things to start becoming more passionate in what they're doing to scale and grow in what they're doing?
I think it depends on what stage you're at. So if you're one of those bright young things who embraces entrepreneurship really young, I don't think this is so much of a problem, because that's an exploration phase. That's a chance for you to trial lots of different things and see what excites you. I always say to people, look, if you suffer all these problems and yet you still feel energized by it, then that's a good thing. Keep pushing at that door and you will learn, you'll grow, and that's great. I think as you get older, it is harder because you get trapped in well, I've got commitments, I need to provide for my family, or mortgages, all the responsibilities that we all have. So I think you need to find a way to evolve what you're doing, pushing out those doors that I say energize and excite you, and that you can commercialize, obviously, because you need to make money out of it. And I did that with my first business. So my first company, I started my life in the military. So my first commercial venture was in building an international search firm. And that really excited me. What I realized is that what excited me was, one, leading and building people and coaching and developing people. I loved that. And then advising businesses on how best to grow high-performing teams, identify great leaders, etc. I loved that stuff. What I realized I didn't love was the underlying mechanics of actually the recruitment process, the search process, that way of delivering value to organization was one I actually fundamentally had some big problems with. And I didn't realize that at the time. It took a while for me to understand that actually I didn't really like that very much. And so, but I'd already had an established business then. It was international. I had 20 consultants. It was doing really well. It's like, I can't blow this up. I can't let them down. So how do I evolve this? And so I just developed a part of my business that allowed me to focus on that leadership development piece that I'd always done. And then slowly over a number of years, I got to the point where I could evolve that out and split those businesses. My business partner took over the main business, and I now just run Haylor Leadership, which is what I always wanted to do. So you have to have a bit of patience to develop yourself down that path of passion so you can really grow something that you love.
Yeah, I love that. So if I'm hearing what you're saying, that is, if you are an established business and you want to, it doesn't drive you, you don't really feel passionate about it, it's okay to have almost an evolving over time into moving into something more of what you love, or restructuring what you're doing. Is that right?
I think so. I mean, some people can just blow everything up and start again, and
Yeah.
good for them. I love that. But I was at a stage where I had two teenage children, a wife. We're sort of in our 40s. Blowing everything up is at that age is a pretty high risk move. So I decided that the evolutionary approach was better. And I have tried that. I was passionate about being in the military, so I knew what it was like to be driven by that real energy and passion that allows you to grow and learn. And then coming into the commercial world was exciting, but I lost some of that when I realized that underneath it, I didn't actually love the core thing that I was delivering value on. So it depends. Sometimes you can do it radically. Sometimes you have to evolve. It depends where you're at and what responsibilities you have.
Yeah. Well, another question, kind of a different side of the same coin type of question here is, what's one of the biggest challenges that you've had in your business, or any point in your business, that at the time seemed quite insurmountable? And when you went through it, now looking back at it, you're quite thankful that you'd gone through that, because it wouldn't have brought you to where you are now.
I've listened to some of your podcasts, and I've heard this question, and it's a really good one. I think it's a difficult one to answer, because especially when you're growing a business, for those of you listening to this who are entrepreneurs, you grow a business, a lot of problems seem insurmountable at the time. And then you kind of just work your way through it, and it turns out it wasn't that hard, and you did find a solution, and it all worked out. And that's why I came back to my first point about that passion point, because when you're faced with a problem that seems insurmountable and you don't actually care whether you get the other side of it, it will be insurmountable. So what is it that drives you to the other side of that insurmountable problem? It's learning that if you have enough belief in your mission, you have enough belief in what is it you're trying to deliver to others, you will find a way. There is always a solution to every problem. And that's what I learned. There is always a solution. You just don't know what it is yet. And you've got to talk to enough people, do enough research, pull your team together. And that process of learning and development will always create the solution. You just don't know what it is yet, but you need that passion to drive you to find the answer. And that was a learning process for me, I think, that's really helped me as I grow.
Yeah, I love that. It's something similar that I kind of mentioned to clients as well. And I'll kind of reiterate it just to make sure I understand what you're saying as well. But it's almost, to me, when I go through that or see clients going through that, it's to me, I think of it like levels of a game. You're on a new level. It's a new challenge, and oftentimes when we're going through that seemingly insurmountable challenge, we think we're the only one that's ever gone through it. We can't get through it, but actually we're not unique, as much as we like to think we are. There's probably thousands, if not millions, of other people that have gone through the exact same challenge. And as you said, reaching out and finding, and there's got to be people with the answer to that, because they've passed that level before. And am I kind of summarizing or paraphrasing correctly what you're saying?
And multiple answers. I really, oddly, given I started in a leadership background, but maybe it's because it was within a big hierarchy, you were more kind of defined. But when I initially had my own company, I did fall into the trap of being, well, everything's on me. I have to provide a solution to this. That didn't work very well until I realized that just go and speak. Like every entrepreneur, every business owner I've ever spoken to is happy to answer when you go, please help me. how do I deal with this? And they go, oh, okay, yeah, well, I've seen that. My friend's seen that. And every time I learned to do that, there was never just one answer. There were about 6 to choose from. There were loads of different solutions. You just had to find the time to network and just open yourself to going, I don't know how to do this. What's the best answer?
Yeah, yeah. And I think one of the things around that as well is oftentimes we think people aren't willing to share those experiences, and I've found it quite the opposite because as I'm sure both me and you know this, like as business owners, there's not loads of people that are going through that same thing just in our normal day-to-day life because a lot of our friends and family aren't business owners. So we can't really talk about it to anybody else, you know? And they don't really understand it from an experiential standpoint. So if someone comes to you saying, hey, have you been through this? Like, oh my God, yes, like this is how I did it. People are very open to share,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, really, really, really interesting. So, yeah, if you were to look over the next like 2 to 5 years of your business and where you want to take it, what are your goals? What are you wanting to accomplish with your business over the next 2 to 5 years?
Well, this is a really interesting question. And I was just writing a newsletter on this morning because my view on that has completely changed. If you were to ask me over the last 20 years, what's your goal? I would always be able to give you a very clear target, pathway, numerical, like everything would be laid out for you.
Yeah.
But I'm a firm believer, especially where I am right now. I'm, leadership advisory for large organizations, startups, which are almost all in the knowledge-based sector. So I'm not dealing with manufacturing firms generally or anything sort of practical or hands-on. So in that knowledge work environment, AI is going to completely invert where our structures are at, the people, how we manage those people, how leadership works. Any company that says we have a 5-year plan and aren't talking about radical change within their business are lying to themselves. It's completely
Yeah.
meaningless. So
Yeah.
I would be lying if I said, right, I've got this very clear 5-year plan, because I can't see exactly how that's going to end up, because no one can.
Yeah.
So my goal at the moment is it's working out how can I best help my clients and people I know to make that transition. I mean, there's some really interesting data. There was a Harvard study I read this morning that's literally just come out, hot off the press, which showed that from Q1 2023, for those companies that have adopted AI, there's been a 22% drop in hiring of graduates, while senior level hires have continued. So we're already seeing a substantial drop off in hiring at the sort of the bottom of that career funnel. That is going to radically change what companies look like, and also what's going to happen to those people. Are we going to find somewhere else for them to work, or are we going to have a whole new generation of entrepreneurs who are starting new businesses and new ideas that adapt to where we're at? I don't know, but I want to be part of the process of helping that transition and helping leaders to transition healthily in a way that sort of creates success for as many people as possible, because otherwise we're going to get a lot of unnecessary friction, which isn't healthy for any of us.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. So even though you may not have clear goals, what are you looking to do in the next, let's say even 2 years? Is it transition, understand where you're going? Like what are your goals?
So for my business right now, so I've, as I said,
Yeah.
stepped away from the established, international search business. So now I'm working out how do I grow that leadership advisory bit in an effective way. So things that I do, I will coach executives. I will plug into international sort of leadership development programs for firms, and I'll run workshops for them. I do sort of executive facilitation services where I'm helping startups where, how do you plan for the future? How do you develop your culture, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of that is based on me and my knowledge and experience. So how do I grow that most effectively? I have a number of associates who pick up and do things for me when they can, but it's about how do you make that really impactful? And I think part of that is working together as a group. What is it that humans can do as a group that AI can't yet do and won't be able to do for quite some time? And there's lots of great people in the leadership development space, but it's very sort of broken down. It's very disparate. There's lots of people talking about lots of little silos, and it's trying to pull it together in a practical way. And coming from a commercial and military background myself, I understand that, yes, there are loads of great ideas, but you can only ever implement 1 or 2 of them if you're lucky, given how busy you are day to day. So how do you practically and commercially get in front of a group of leaders in a busy business who are transitioning through the AI revolution and help them to lead better
Yeah.
practically and commercially.
Yeah. Amazing.
That's what I need to achieve over the next couple of years.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Well, David, for people that may want to get in contact with you, do you have a website that you can give or anything how they can contact you?
Yeah, so the website's haylorleadership.com. We've got a YouTube channel under Haylor Leadership as well, but LinkedIn's probably the best. If you just find David Haylor on LinkedIn, I'm pretty busy on there, so I should be fairly easy to find. And always happy to chat about anything to do with leadership and all the fun things that come with the transition and changes we're going through.
Absolutely. Amazing. Amazing. Well, David, thank you so much for being on the show. And as a reminder to everyone, this show is sponsored by the LinkedIn Reverse Podcast Method, the new way to close deals that doesn't rely on any of the old traditional methods that everyone hates. If you want to generate leads on LinkedIn, you have to stop marketing. To find out more, direct message me on LinkedIn, have a chat, and that will be in the show notes below.